Every Sunday at exactly 9 o'clock there was a knock at my door. 3 steady raps, never hurried, never late. The first time it happened, I was still in my robe with a coffee mug in my hand. I opened the door expecting a package or a salesman. Instead, an older man stood on my porch holding a small paper bag. He wore a pressed shirt buttoned to the top and a wool cap pulled low over kind eyes. "Good morning," he said softly, as if we were already friends. "I think you dropped this yesterday." Inside the bag was a library book I hadn't realized was missing. I stammered my thanks. He nodded once and walked down the steps to a modest brick house across the street with a teal porch swing that never moved. The following Sunday at 9 o'clock the knock came again. This time he held a newspaper folded neatly in half. "They delivered it to my house by mistake," he said. "Figured you'd want it before the crossword dried out." I laughed at the odd phrasing. He smiled and left. On the third Sunday, there was no pretext at all, just the knock and a thermos of coffee and 2 cups. "It's too much for one man," he said, "and it tastes better shared." That was how it began. A quiet ritual built from small gestures. His name was Sam. He had been a carpenter before retirement. His wife, June, had died 5 years earlier. He had a grown daughter in another state and a grandson he hadn't met yet. He lived alone in the brick house with the porch swing. At first our conversations were brief, weather, sports, local gossip, but something about his steadiness made it easy to let my guard down. I told him about my job at the credit union, about my divorce, about how Sundays had become the loneliest day of my week. He listened without flinching, eyes steady, hands wrapped around his coffee like it was an anchor. Each Sunday he would bring something different: a slice of banana bread, a clipping from his garden, a book he thought I'd like. He never stayed more than an hour. "Leave before you're boring," he'd say with a wink. Little by little the hour became the center of my week. I started tidying the kitchen on Saturday nights, setting out 2 mugs instead of 1, leaving the porch light on even after sunrise. It was like discovering a hidden staircase inside an ordinary house. One rainy Sunday, he knocked and I opened the door to find him holding a small pie wrapped in foil. "Peach," he said. "My wife's recipe. Haven't baked it in years." We ate it standing at the counter, juice running down our wrists, laughing at the mess. He told me about the summer he and June had built the porch swing together, and how she'd insisted on painting it teal even though the house was brick. I found myself telling him about the night my marriage ended, a story I hadn't shared with anyone. He didn't interrupt, just listened, nodding slowly. When I finished, he said, "Pain's a kitchen. Everything you put in comes out changed. Sometimes sweeter, sometimes not. But you still have to stir." By midsummer, our Sundays had begun to spill beyond that single hour. Sam would linger a little longer, finishing his coffee while showing me how to mend a wobbly kitchen chair or prune the basil on my windowsill. Sometimes I'd wave at him during the week when he was working in his yard, and he'd call out a recipe suggestion or ask how the chili turned out. Little by little the line between Sunday visitor and friend blurred. He began inviting me across the street, first to look at a new birdhouse he'd built, then to help carry boxes down from his attic. His house smelled of cedar and lemon oil, the scent of wood he'd sanded and furniture he'd kept. In his living room sat the teal porch swing he and June had built, now mounted on a sturdy frame. We drank coffee there one evening as the sun went down, and he told me about the road trip he and June had planned but never taken. "Maybe one day," he said softly, staring at the swing's worn armrest. "During the week I'd find small gifts on my doorstep, a jar of homemade jam, a clipping from his rose bush, a book he thought I'd like." I started leaving things for him too: a loaf of bread from a bakery near my office, a printout of a crossword we'd struggled with, a bag of coffee beans. It became a wordless dialogue of care. The ritual of Sunday knocked me out of my own routines. I found myself cooking real meals again instead of microwaving dinner. I started cleaning my kitchen with the same pride Sam took in his roses. Even my colleagues at the credit union noticed a change. "You look lighter," one of them said. I just smiled. Then one Sunday the knock didn't come. 9 o'clock passed, then 9:15. I checked the window, then the porch. Nothing. My stomach tightened. At 9:30, I crossed the street and knocked on his door. No answer. I circled to the back where the roses grew and saw the gate unlatched. Inside, a half-finished cup of coffee sat on the porch table, steam gone cold. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling, and dialed his number. It rang on the other side of the door. I left a message, tried again, then went back home and sat at my kitchen table staring at the empty mug I'd set out for him. He showed up an hour later, pale but upright, a plastic bag in one hand. "Clinic ran late," he said, forcing a smile. "Routine checkup, nothing dramatic." He set the bag on my counter and pulled out a loaf of bread. "Figured you'd be worried." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. We sat and ate toast in silence. After a while he said, "I don't have many people waiting for me anymore." "It's nice." His voice cracked on the last word. That moment changed the cadence of our Sundays. He began telling me more about his health, the checkups, the medications, the way his knees ached when the weather changed. I began checking in on him during the week, texting to ask if he needed anything from the store, leaving soup on his porch when he felt tired. Our conversations grew deeper. He told me about the years after June died, how he'd stopped cooking for himself, how he'd once gone 3 days without speaking to another person. I told him about my own long evenings after the divorce, the microwave dinners, the TV left on for company. We began to joke that our friendship was a 2-person support group with snacks. One Sunday, he brought over a photograph of his daughter and grandson. "They're coming for Christmas," he said, eyes bright. "First time in years." He paused. "Would you like to meet them?" The question startled me with its intimacy. "I'd be honored," I said. It hit me then that what had started as a knock on my door had become a door opening in both our lives, a place where 2 lonely routines had turned into a shared rhythm. Christmas arrived, and with it a different kind of anticipation. The Sunday before the holiday, Sam knocked at 9 as usual, but this time with a stack of photographs in his hands instead of coffee. He spread them across my table like a deck of cards, pictures of June laughing on the porch swing, of his daughter Lila as a child, of a baby he hadn't met yet except in pixels. "I want you to know who's coming," he said quietly. On Christmas Eve he called me. "Would you stop by tomorrow afternoon?" he asked. "I'd like you to meet them." When I walked across the street the next day, the teal porch swing was decorated with pine garland. Through the window I saw a boy about 8 playing with a wooden train and a young woman stirring something on the stove. Sam opened the door, face bright. "This is Lila," he said. "And this is Jamie." We drank cocoa at his kitchen table. Lila told me she'd been worried about her father living alone. "He sounded happier on the phone lately," she said. "Now I see why." Sam chuckled. "Your dad's got a Sunday friend," he said. Jamie climbed onto his grandfather's lap holding a cookie shaped like a star. "Grandpa says you like coffee," he told me solemnly. It was a simple afternoon, but it shifted something inside me. I realized our Sundays had become not just a habit but a tether, connecting lives that had been drifting. Seeing Sam with his family, seeing the way they relaxed into the kitchen, made me understand that the knock on my door had started a ripple bigger than either of us. After they flew back home, Sam seemed both lighter and a little lost. "The house feels quieter," he admitted one Sunday, "but not as empty as before. It's like a tide went out but left something good behind." We began planning small projects for spring. He wanted to build a new birdhouse. I wanted to repaint my porch. We joked about starting a Sunday breakfast club. Then, one rainy March morning, Sam arrived with no food, no newspaper, just a heavy look in his eyes. He sat at my kitchen table and said, "I almost sold the house last year. Called a realtor and everything. I was so lonely I thought maybe moving closer to Lila would solve it. Then you opened your door and I thought maybe I don't have to go yet." He looked down at his hands. "I don't think you know what these mornings have done for me. It's like having a reason to iron a shirt again. To bake. To remember I'm still part of a street, not just a man in a house." I felt my throat tighten. "I didn't know," I said softly. "I thought you were just being kind to me." He smiled. "Kindness is rarely one way." He sipped his coffee. "If something ever happens to me, I've left a note in my kitchen drawer with your name on it. It's just a list of people to call. I don't want my daughter to have to guess who mattered to me." "You don't have to," I started. "I know," he said. "But I want to. You're family now." From that day, the Sundays stopped being a ritual and became a commitment, not a duty but a choice. We both began to guard that hour like it was something sacred. Spring brought a different light to our Sundays. Sam would arrive at 9 with a bag of rolls or a clipping of herbs from his garden. We'd drink coffee, cook small things, talk about plans for the week. But beneath the easy rhythm, there was a new closeness. He'd begun showing me his old travel journals, the maps of places he and June had wanted to visit. One morning, he spread a train schedule across my table. "We never did this," he said. "Maybe I still can." 2 weeks later, he knocked at 9 holding 2 train tickets instead of coffee. "The road trip June and I never took," he said with a shy grin. "Would you come with me? Just a weekend. We'll bring sandwiches and a thermos like 2 kids skipping school." I hesitated. It felt intimate, like stepping into a story that wasn't mine, but his eyes were hopeful. "I'd be honored," I said. We left on a Saturday morning and rode the train to a small coastal town. The rhythm of the wheels felt like a heartbeat under our feet. Sam stared out the window and told me stories about building houses, about the first time he kissed June on a job site, about how he still heard her laugh when he used certain tools. We ate sandwiches on the boardwalk, watched gulls dive for scraps, walked past antique shops without going in. For a little while, the weight of years lifted from his shoulders. On the train back, he grew quiet. "I didn't think I'd ever see this place," he said. "Thank you for coming." I squeezed his shoulder. "Thank you for asking." That Sunday when he knocked, we didn't bother with small talk. We just sat at my kitchen table with coffee, letting the trip settle in. After a while, he reached across and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," he said simply, "for answering the door that first day. For everything after." I realized then how far we had both come from our separate silences. His knock had been a question. My opening the door had been an answer. Together we had built a small bridge of routine sturdy enough to carry loneliness out and bring connection in. Spring faded into summer, and our Sundays settled into a quiet, deliberate rhythm again. Sam kept coming at 9. Sometimes he brought herbs from his garden, sometimes a stack of old photographs, sometimes just himself. We'd drink coffee, plan small projects, talk about books, and sit in the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. His health stayed steady. He started walking more, eating better, even meeting neighbors he'd once only waved to. We painted my porch together one weekend, teal on the railings as a joke, and he laughed until his eyes watered. June would approve, he said. One Sunday, he showed me a draft of a letter he'd written to his daughter explaining our friendship. "I don't want her to wonder who this person is in my life," he said. "I want her to know." The letter ended with, "He opened his door. I opened my life." That's how family can happen. We kept building small things, another birdhouse, a raised bed for tomatoes, a new trellis for the roses. Each project felt like stitching another seam in the fabric of our 2 houses. Neighbors started stopping by more often, Mrs. Green bringing muffins, Ben offering to mow Sam's lawn. The street began to feel like a long table instead of a row of doors. Then one quiet Sunday, Sam arrived without coffee, without food, just a warm look. "I don't have a gift today," he said. "I just wanted to thank you for being here, for making these years different." We sat at the kitchen table with nothing between us but 2 mugs and a decade's worth of stories. That evening, after he went home, I sat on my porch steps watching the sun slip behind his maple tree. The teal swing moved slightly in the breeze. I thought about how easy it would have been to ignore that first knock, to let the book stay lost, to keep my world small. And I wondered how many doors we all pass every day that could lead to connection if only we'd open them. I looked down at the coffee mug in my hands and felt a quiet gratitude that had nothing to do with luck or money. It had to do with showing up week after week until 2 lives found a rhythm. Sam's knock had been a question. My opening the door had been an answer. Together we had built something that turned loneliness into belonging. I'll leave you with this. If a stranger, a neighbor, or a friend knocks on your door next Sunday at 9, what will you do? Will you keep your life the same, or will you open it and see who might be standing there?